Welcome back to the Left of Old North. I'm your host, Adrian.
And I'm your other host, CJ.
And today, it is Pride Month. Woo! So for all my ladies, gentlemen, and everything in between, or outside of that, however you identify yourself, thank you for tuning in and listening. Again, my name is Adrian, he, him pronouns, and CJ, as far as I know, is he, him as well.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
So it is June 1st when we're recording this. When we release it, it'll be June 2nd. And across the country, cities are raising rainbow flags, holding parades, and spotlighting LGBTQ plus stories. And companies are changing their logos as they do every year. And, you know, I sometimes flip-flop between being like scrolling through my timeline and thinking, oh, that's nice. They changed their logo. And when I see like Raytheon do it, I've become a little bit less enthused. But naturally, the terminally online, when they're not sucking up to Elon Musk, are working in droves to make Pride especially hostile for queer people online. And in North Carolina, it's only getting harder to pretend that visibility is enough. So here at Left of Old North, for us, Pride Month is about resistance just as much as it's about celebration.
Yeah.
So let's be real. Are we ready to get real, CJ?
I think so.
I hope so. The NCGOP has spent the last few years, and I use the term the last few years very liberally, turning our state into a testing ground for anti-gay legislation. Would you say that's true?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Especially against the trans youth.
We just have to go back to 2016, HB2.
Yeah, and we almost got a whole redux of that.
Yeah, we almost did this go around. Luckily, the new version of it died, which I think we mentioned a few episodes back. But new version of it died. But still, the fact that it was even introduced in the first place again, says a lot. I mean, it's been 9 years since HB2. You would think, or at least would hope, right, that we as a state, as a society, having the legislative body that we do, you would hope and think that maybe we would progress a little bit. But alas, here we are. We have, still just absolute disgusting anti-LGBT legislation coming out of the General Assembly.
Yep. For every progress, there is regress, unfortunately. So while corporations are slapping rainbows on their logos, Republicans in Raleigh continue to slap bills on Phil Berger and Destin Hall's desks and ask them to demonize queer people and criminalize care. And that's not stopping anytime soon.
Oh, no. Not at all.
And
not at all.
And in the last few years, right, because I mentioned the last few years, I just want to run down a couple of the things that Republicans have done to attack the gay community. Republicans passed a sweeping slate of anti-trans laws in 2023, banning gender-affirming care for minors, and a Don't Say Gay style law that restricted what educators could say about gender and sexuality. HB 574, which was the so-called Fairness in Women's Sport Act. And again, they don't care about fairness in women's sports. That's not the point. It banned trans girls from competing in school sports despite zero evidence of it being an actual issue in North Carolina. So,
yeah.
Taxpayer dollars at work, everybody.
Living in North Carolina and growing up in a small town, I know all about the kind of like the small town network of communication, let's say. One person on one side of town says something, someone else on the other side knows about it in 30 minutes. My understanding, at least, is it was HB 574, the anti-trans youth or anti-trans athletes bill.
Yeah.
My understanding is that what happened was like there was a volleyball match, like a high school volleyball match. A person got like knocked down. She got pissed, started making all these wild ass accusations, and it blew up. All because like one person got mad. That was it. At least that's my understanding of it.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
This is such a non-issue, right? on both a state level and a national level, because we see this conversation happening on a national scale as well. Someone put it like this: you know how many like like how do they put it? The number of like trans athletes competing in like high school sports right now, it's like less than the number of kids that Elon has. You know,
Yeah,
that's how it's.
that's very
And
true.
obviously, don't know the exact number, but it's
I don't think
to
Elon knows
say
the exact number of kids he has.
I don't think he knows what planet he's on. He's too high on ketamine all the damn time, pissing himself apparently, and getting cucked by Stephen Miller.
Oh shit. No, I think it's the other way around. I think Stephen Miller is
Oh no,
getting
it is. That's right, right. Okay, fucking Stephen Miller.
he's getting clocked by him. That's for sure.
So bringing it back. We'll see if this stays in the episode or not.
Yeah.
But
No, it
bringing it
will.
back.
It
I
will.
mean, that's gonna be a TikTok. Anyway, so like I said, HB 574. It is such a non-issue, but as we've said before, Republicans know their regular policies can't pass or aren't popular, so they have to focus on those like kind of culture or issues. And what happens in that is
Yeah.
the people who tend to be knocked down the most in general just continue to be piled on
Right.
and used as scapegoats, and used to create the fear of the other essentially. And like with Senate Bill 49, the Don't Say Gay bill, right? So this is what it says. It says it targets LGBTQ plus youth by limiting instruction on gender identity and sexuality in K through 4 classrooms, and requiring schools to inform parents about changes to a student's name or pronouns, right? Bans curriculum on gender identity, sexual activity, or sexuality in kindergarten through 4th grade. Okay, I could be wrong. I don't remember hearing a lot about sex in K through 4th grade to begin with, but that's just a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But like, this also filters down simply to say, a teacher saying, "Hey," or a male teacher saying, "Hey, my husband and I went and did this the other day," or
Yes.
a female teacher saying, "My wife and I," or whatever. It has these consequences. This law can be violated super easily in the most innocuous sort of way,
Right.
right? But also, one thing that bothers me immensely about that bill, and other bills like it throughout the country, is it turns teachers in this sense into mandatory reporters.
Yes.
Obviously, everyone deserves to be loved and accepted for who they are, regardless of gender identity, regardless of sexual orientation, all that. But you are forcing teachers to out students who might not be in a safe environment.
Yeah.
That's dangerous. You say you care about the students, you care about the kids, but then you go and risk them being in a dangerous situation by outing them.
Right. And on the flip side of that, it is targeted erasure of a person's sexual identity just because you're explicitly saying I have a husband or I have a wife and you are of the same sex. But it's literally no different if there is a same-sex couple and they mention their husbands or their wives. It is entirely the same. And if conservatives are so worried about their kids asking questions, then they're going to really need to explain to them why Stephen Miller is getting... That cannot stay in the episode. I'm going to have to cut that out. Anyway,
Shit.
If conservatives are so concerned about kids asking questions in the classroom, they're kind of missing the point of what school is.
Yeah.
I mean, not only is it about education, but it's about socializing with your peers. Like, they want, at some point, and this may be a little bit too, like, 1984 brained, but do they just want everybody to have, like, blinders? Would they prefer for all kids to just be in cubicles and, like, have an iPad with their teacher's face on it, and the teacher isn't actually a real teacher, it's just an AI teacher? And then, like, the curriculum... I'm not trying to give them any ideas here, but we're already pretty close to that.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean,
despite the fact that they want to tout that they're raising teacher pay, the fact of the matter is that we have already lost a lot of great teachers in this state, specifically because of these types of bills. And if we want to go even harsher, conservative lawmakers have floated even harsher measures like forcing teachers to out trans, gay youth to parents. And they've already done that to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Because
And
it seems innocuous, right? If there's a name change. It's like,
right,
well, wouldn't you want your parents to know? That's not the point, though. And you know that it's not. Because one of the only reasons that a teenager would change their name is because they want to be referred to as something else rather than their gender assigned at birth name.
right, exactly. It's bills like this are dangerous, and some of them are, gussied up. They're like disguised to, look innocuous,
Well, they're
but
trapdoors, right?
yeah, the intent behind them though is a sinister one.
Yeah.
It really is.
And what I mean by trapdoors is it's a way to bait people on the other side of the issue to support, by proxy, support something that is inherently bad, right? Like a good example would be, oh, so you are pro pedophilia because you
It,
support this bill, and it could be anything. Democrats do it too. There have
yeah,
been many instances of that where like parties will create trapdoors within bills so that if you are supporting this thing that you are obviously morally wrong in some cases, it's just politics, baby. But that is what these bills are, because then you can just pull the rug out and be like, yeah, but that means that you're sexualizing children.
yeah,
And then it becomes an issue that
and
they can run off of in the next cycle.
yeah, it does. It forces you into a situation where you have to explain. And in politics, if you are constantly explaining, you are losing.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
And fortunately, it's a sword that cuts both ways, right? This is part of why Mark Robinson lost his bid for governor, because he had so many clips of him just being outright anti-gay, like could not defend it, anti-gay, calling LGBTQ plus people filth, the scum of the earth. I may be paraphrasing a little bit, but that is the gist of it. And those clips were played over and over and over and over again. So at some point, you're going to be embarrassed. Everybody has a friend or a loved one or a coworker that's gay or that's trans or bi. Maybe not everybody has one that's trans, but everybody has somebody that they know tangentially within their lives, within their circle that falls in this category. So it becomes something that's really difficult to tell yourself, like, I'm okay with voting this for this person when he keeps talking about stuff like that. It tanked him both in
yeah,
polling and at the end of the year with the election. But the problem is that that's one guy, and the legislature is stacked with extremists that are more interested in targeting kids than fixing real issues, more interested in targeting
yeah.
trans people and drag shows than they are in fixing the damage wrought by Hurricane Helene in Western North Carolina, which we can talk about in a minute because
Yes, we
we'll get to
will.
that.
People are, or the trans community is demonized, but you're more likely to be assaulted by some straight white Christian male
Yeah.
than you are someone who's trans. I mean, it's true.
And this isn't all to say this Pride episode, this right at the beginning of Pride Month, is meant to be like, well, look at all the bad things that have happened, because all the bad things that have happened to gay and queer people and trans people in the past. It's to show that celebrating Pride, celebrating this month of June, is more than just celebration. It is about bonding together, continuing to organize, continuing to educate both ourselves and each other, and to fight back.
Yes, I do want to point out, the fact that some Republicans like to try and make this into a, oh well, there weren't any, gay people when I was growing up. No, there were. Queer people have always existed,
Oh
and they
my
always
god.
will.
It's like,
You
yeah,
know?
man, cuz if they were, if they'd be ostracized.
Yeah. No, and I mean, some were, despite some of the things that they've done. One of the first people that comes to mind is Alan Turing.
Yes.
He was the mathematician who essentially broke the German code machine in World War II.
Yeah.
And then what happened? He was, I think chemically castrated, if I
He
remember
was chemically
correctly.
castrated, and
Yeah, chemically castrated and ostracized from society despite saving thousands of lives with his work. You
yeah.
know,
No, these are our friends. They're our neighbors. They're people that we work with, and they're our kids that are born right now that are going to be gay or trans, bisexual, lesbians. It happens,
weird.
and we're here to let you know that as long as there is a fight, we will be in it. Um, and so this month, we are going to be interviewing some people. We're going to be digging into the history of LGBTQ plus issues in North Carolina. We're going to be talking to some folks who are a lot more educated on these subjects than we are and asking them some questions. And I hope you'll stick around with us. Before we move on to our next topic, just want to say that if you have anything that you'd like to express to us, make sure to email us, send us a message on any of our socials. We're at Left of Old North on pretty much everything. We'd love to hear from you, and have a very, very, very happy Pride Month.
So, we just talked about a lot of bad bills that the General Assembly has had in the past, but that isn't to say there is any shortage of bad bills coming down the pipeline. And we'll get to one specific one here in just a moment. But first, I just want to talk about, as we are recording this, as we mentioned earlier, is June 1st. So it's a Sunday. And this past week, the General Assembly has been on a break, right? Just a little legislative break. Essentially, what they did was they said, hey, we got our two biggest bills this session. We voted on them. We've sent them over to the Senate. So we're going to peace out for a week. And those two big bills were Hurricane Helene relief, which, I've gone through literally every page of that, and it's actually a pretty good bill, not going to lie. It's surprisingly not sketch. Kudos to Republicans for doing something right.
Not too many of them, though.
But yeah, true. And the other is the budget for the next 2 years. The next 2 years are called the biennium. So the next biennium's budget. They voted on it and they sent it over to the Senate. And word on the street, so to say, is that Phil Berger really has no interest in passing a budget.
Really?
Right? Yeah. It's Phil Berger we're talking about. He's not the most small d Democratic person, let's say.
Sure, yeah.
He is very much a person who he would rather stall the budget and use the previous biennium's budget. He would rather do that and, enrich his, handful of, rich friends than help the entire state of North Carolina. That's the kind of person he is. He is willing to put his one singular person needs before the entire state.
Now, I would ask why, but I mean, it's almost self-evident why.
He is like this villain out of some like 1980s like kids movie. He's like holding up a bag of cash and taking candy from a baby. Like that's the type of person he is.
Yeah, of course. He's he's the Burgermeister. He's Phil Berger, Burgermeister from
Oh my god.
Santa
Oh,
Claus.
that's good. That is good. I like that. So part of me does wonder if one of the reasons he doesn't want to pass the budget is because one, he just doesn't want to put in the work. He doesn't want to put in that effort because he has to negotiate with the House, essentially. They have to kind of find a middle ground. And if we look at stuff like, say, teacher pay that the House passed versus what the Senate was looking at, the House was doing like an 8.2% raise in teacher pay, I think. The Senate was like 2%.
It's like four times
which is
the amount.
Yeah, yeah. So part of me just wonders if he's like, well, there's not going to be any middle ground here, so fuck off. That's
Great. Now I'm gonna have to blur that.
No, so
Thanks for making more work for
so
me.
you're welcome. You're welcome. Anything I can do to help. So who knows the absolute true reason? But I mean, like you said, I think it's kind of self-evident at this point. It really is.
I mean, what other
And
conclusion
it's a
could you draw?
disservice to
What other conclusion could
It's
you
a
draw?
disservice to yeah, true. But it is a disservice to the people of North Carolina. It really is. The people of North Carolina, or at least his district, voted him in to represent their interests and work for them,
Yeah.
right?
Supposedly, allegedly.
He doesn't care. Why should he? The Senate has a supermajority. Why should they have to, do shit?
Yeah. It's the same reason why some of these GOP lawmakers are just straight up not showing up to their town halls.
It's gonna be interesting to see what happens. It really is. But I mean, if this is the route that he goes, then it is a slap in the face to literally every North Carolinian. It truly is.
Yeah. I mean, so here's the thing that I'm concerned about too, is we know that this Hurricane Helene Part 2 bill, that's separate from the budget.
Yes.
Is there any kind of resistance that is going to be seen from when it comes through the House to when it goes to the Senate?
Not that I know, not that I know of, not that I've heard of, not that I suspect actually, because the Helene bill, like I said, it actually seems legitimate.
Oh,
I don't think there's
that's
any
not what
actual,
I'm worried about. I'm saying that, like, if Phil Berger is such a penny pincher, this has, as you just mentioned, it is a quality bill, and that already makes it much more suspect for me that it's going to actually pass the North Carolina Senate.
That's fair. I do think it will ultimately because, I mean, I don't think there's going to be any choice. Additional aid from DC is not coming.
Yeah.
It's literally all on the General Assembly at this point. That's it.
Yeah.
That's just the facts.
Yeah, Trump is not going
Trump,
to come and save
yeah,
us.
Trump said, fuck you with your North Carolina. You're on your own.
Yeah.
So it's up to us. That's all it is. It's up to us. And so I do think it's interesting, and maybe this is just being grasping at straws. It might be. I do think it is interesting that they did do this as two separate bills. And part of me wonders if they did it in hopes that, be less likely to be voted down, because if the Helene stuff was worked into the budget, then there is always a chance of it just not being passed at all. Like what you said.
I think that that's part of it, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, just
I also,
like you were saying, it is entirely possible that this bill will pass through. But if they're already penny pinching over little things like teacher pay, like road repair, like all these tiny little things that they're like, we're probably not even going to pass a budget because it doesn't include provisions for this. It doesn't give more tax breaks to corporations. It's not giving. Wasn't there something in there about how like they want to give more tax incentives to Duke Energy?
But yeah, there was something about that. Yeah.
Well, and the point being that like Duke Energy fleeces its customers because it's basically a monopoly out here, and we have experienced markups over and over and over again in energy bills because we don't really have anywhere else to turn to. There's not like a competitor out here. Even though it is a private corporation. But anyway, my point being that, so yeah, entirely possible that they split up this bill on purpose because they knew Destin Hall would pass it, even if Phil Berger won't. Or, on the flip side, the House Republicans talked, and they were like, look, we have a better chance of this passing if it's not even in this bill. Like, let's not make it an omnibus spending bill. Let's make it something different. Or not omnibus, but let's not make it a catch-all spending bill. Let's make it something more like we're spending for this, and this is ancillary spending specifically for Helene.
Yeah. And if that is the case, I think that has very interesting implications on House Republicans' views of Senate Republicans. I will say, I think it's pretty fair-ish to say that the Senate Republicans are definitely more conservative than the House Republicans. Not to say that the House Republicans are any, I don't know, Marxist type of thing. Not at all. But, like, they're obviously definitely way too far to the right. But I think the Senate is definitely a couple notches further.
Interesting. We need to grade some of these people on a scale. Do like a Locke Foundation kind of thing. And just look at each individual, 200 and some odd members of the General Assembly here in North Carolina, and just rank them.
I'm up on a future episode. No,
hey, I mean, people have suggested to us to put like some kind of collaborative tool out there. That might be something that we should look at doing. It's hey, you don't know who your representative is? Do you want the biased version of that? Well, here you go.
Oh, let's see. Your representative is blah blah blah. Oh, so sorry. Cue
Ooh.
the sad Price is Right music. Uh,
Sorry,
anyway,
you got Phil Berger.
all this to say, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens. But those are definitely the two big bills that I think everyone is going to be focused on.
Yeah.
And because they are focused on that, that allows some other bills to kind of sneak through a little bit.
Yeah.
And one I think that we really need to talk about is House Bill 127. So
This is a big one.
if
Strap
you,
yourselves in, folks.
yeah, if you look it up on the General Assembly's website, the name of the bill is Voter Registration Drive Form. All right. I am going to try and quickly go through this bill summary that the UNC school government put together, but it's not great. So essentially, it requires the State Board of Elections to develop a sample voter registration form, right, to be used for organized voter registration drives, and that form should look clearly distinguishable from an actual voter registration application form, right? The disclaimer saying that is not an actual registration form for voting purposes, right?
Already
And it
confused.
should also include information on like where you can obtain an actual voter registration form, where to return that actual registration form, how to register online with a list of important dates, including like the deadline for registering to vote, blah 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 blah. I'm going to skip ahead to the most important thing, right? So what this does ultimately is it prevents organized voter registration drives offering the voter registration form, like the actual official form. And it says that violation of that is a class 2 misdemeanor. So just kind of giving you an idea of what that is in North Carolina, it is up to like $1,000 fine. It's trying to find where it says, I think you have to do usually like 75 hours of community service for a dismissal, that kind of thing, right? Some other class 2 misdemeanors in North Carolina includes disorderly conduct, failure to report an accident, report false police reports, trespassing, harassing phone calls, resisting officers, street racing, things like that, right?
Jeez.
But in the grand scheme of things, it might not seem, that bad, so say.
Right.
But the fact is, they are trying to criminalize voter registration drives. Now, in North Carolina, you can be registered to vote when you go to the DMV, for example, right? Whenever you renew your driver's license or you get your driver's license for the first time or whatever, you can renew it. So that is one way that people do. Some people will just straight up go to the Board of Elections and say, hey, I just moved here, let me sign up. But a lot of people register to vote through voter registration drives.
Right.
And
Because
this is
it's
going to be a
right
little
there.
anecdotal right here. Exactly. This is going to be anecdotal, but like, I'm wearing my iHeart Apps shirt, right? When I was at App State,
Folks, this
I
will
worked a little
this
bit
will
with
not be the first nor the last time that CJ brings up that he went to App State.
it has a point. So when I was at App and was working with the Watauga Dems, they were notorious for their voter registration drives, right? I mean, between like August and October, they regularly register like 1,500 new voters.
Oh
It's
wow.
an insane number. It's always an insane number. It's impressive. And as, freshmen coming in and whatnot, who want to register to vote for the first time. Again, that's kind of anecdotal, but the point is, like, these registration drives are how a lot of people sign up.
Yeah.
And what this bill does is it criminalizes that. Not only that, but if you are having a voter registration drive, it's not allowing you to actually sign people up, is telling you, hey, you can only give out information about how to register to vote, which purposefully creates unnecessary confusion.
Hmm.
Purposefully creates unnecessary confusion. But it also decentivizes that person from taking that next step and registering.
Yeah.
You might have some random person go, hey, yeah, no, I want to register to vote. I've never done this before. What all do I need to do? Oh, well, you see this voter registration sheet. That's what it will look like. here you go, here's information you need. And they'll think, oh, well, this is what I need to fill out, and that's it. Or they'll be like, oh, well, I'll do it later, toss it aside, and it never happens.
Right.
This is very much a dangerous bill. I'm very much a voting rights person.
Oh wow, that's a
And
bold stance of you.
I know, right? I know.
In this day and age, apparently being pro voting is like you crazy weird lib. You want people to vote? No. Ew, fucking.
How dare I?
Soy boy.
I think I will say one of the newest, actually, I think the newest member of the state house, Phil Rubin, did a video about this bill the other day.
Sure did.
This bill is going to be heard in the election committee, election law, like House Standing Committee, on Tuesday, the 3rd at 10 a.m. Right?
Yep.
And he said, his video, there is reason to suspect that at the very last minute they are going to drop a new version of the bill and that it could potentially be worse. So who knows what that's going to look like if it happens. But even as is, this is a dangerous bill. I can only imagine what a worse version of this is going to look like.
I mean, I can imagine, but we'll have to wait and see, unfortunately. And in the meantime, what can we do to like, what kind of action can we even take to try and fight against this?
Honestly, this sounds, cliche, but it's true. Call your representative, right? Because if this gets out of committee, then it's going to go to the floor for votes and whatnot. Call a member and keep on calling. Call them, email them, write them. Show up to the General Assembly building, Yep. Make sure that people know that this shit cannot stand. Make sure that they know that you think this is a dangerous bill. Make sure they know that you believe that we should be making it easier for people to register to vote, not harder.
Yeah. And if you have somebody in your orbit that is a Republican or that supports this kind of push, remind them that volunteer-driven voter registration drives are a lot of the time done by churches and local civic groups that are nonpartisan.
That's right.
This should be a nonpartisan issue. This should just be a non-issue. You should be allowed to help people register to vote. That the fact that they want to criminalize that, I would be shocked if some third party here in North Carolina does not sue to try and bring this to court, because this, to me, someone who is not at all qualified to judge these things, but to me, as somebody who has looked at a lot of election law and has looked at a lot of Supreme Court cases, this seems right up the alley of something that should be challenged in court.
Yeah.
That, hey, you can't stop people from being able to register other people to vote. There is no law that says that people can't, there's nothing in the Constitution that says that people cannot assist other people in voting. They're not doing anything illegal, but you want to make it illegal. This should be challenged in court. And I think what you said, I think, is a better first step to rely upon, which is we need to call our representatives. We need to let them know that this shit cannot stand. And if it does make it out of committee, you can be rest assured that we will be, if not part of the organization of getting people to the Capitol to stand in the gallery and shout our frustration, then we will certainly be there.
Yes. And one other thing I want to suggest that people do, I know I said call your representative, right? I want y'all to also call the sponsors of the bill itself, even if they're not your representative. I want you to make sure they know how bad this bill is. They know how bad this bill is, but they need to hear it from you as well.
Yeah.
And so just so y'all know who all is involved, we have Donnie Loftus, we have Jonathan Allman, we have Hugh Blackwell.
Where are these guys out of? What counties?
So we got Burke County, we've got Gaston, we've got Cabarrus. Let's see, who else is there? There's Echevarria, who is, let me find it again. He is Cabarrus as well, and he's also a freshman. He's a freshman member. And then we have your bestie, Adrian, Bill Ward.
Every fucking time. Any bad bills that you're going to see go through the House, I can guarantee that he will be tangentially related.
To just make sure I have all the information for y'all, Bill Ward, he's Camden, Gates, Hertford, and Pasquotank. But like, call these sponsors. Again, they know what's in this bill. They know it's a bad bill. They will, if it gets out of committee, if it gets to the floor, they will defend it and try to spin it as it's, some sort of big win for democracy. It is something that is going to only empower the voters, or some absolute fucking bullshit excuse.
You know how they're going to spin it, which is that we're preventing voter fraud.
Which, okay. Voter fraud is such a fucking rarity. It shouldn't even be a blip on the fucking radar. Do we need secure elections? Yes, of course we do. Of course we do. Voter fraud happens so rarely and in such low numbers. There was a study that came out through, I think it was in Washington State in 2020. They found that over an 8-year period, out of 4.5 million votes, only 14 cases popped up where there's a case of possible voter fraud, right? That was insane, right?
It simply just, it doesn't happen on the scale that Republicans are talking about. Much like the trans issue. It just simply does not happen on the scale that they are trying to paint it as.
Right. But they are able to paint it like that because they know that people are, so busy with their lives that they might not necessarily know what the actual numbers are.
Yeah.
They paint it that way because they know it makes a good soundbite.
And it's fear. You're able to control the narrative by fear. Fear that some dark entity is taking over our elections, that people who aren't actually real are voting. Dead people are voting. Millions of immigrants are voting. And not only are they voting, they're turning your kids trans. And then they're going to compete in sports and beat girls in swimming. And it's like, all of this ties together. It's different issues. We managed to tie a nice little bow around both of the topics that we talked about today. But all that being said, there's a lot of action to be taken on both of these fronts. So above all else, we are action oriented on this show. Call your legislators, call your state senators, call your county commissioners. Seriously, there are tons of ways that county commissioners and city councils can actually get involved and make sure to plant their flag, so to speak, plant their big gay flag, and let people know that they support the LGBTQ community. In fact, one of the first cities in my county this week is going to be declaring a pride support statement, a declaration of pride. It's the first time that's ever happened in this county, ever. And that's a step in the right direction, if I may say so myself. But it's planting a flag nonetheless.
Go to community meetings. Go to like your state board of elections meeting, or not state board, county board of elections meetings. Get involved on a micro level if you can. Just be in the room, if anything.
Yeah.
By you being in the room, it shows that the people who are doing the work there, it shows them that they are not doing it without witnesses.
Yeah. People say they want to be in the room where it happens, and in some rooms it is incredibly easy to get in there. So get in there. Yeah. What are you waiting for? And I hope that while you're doing that, you continue to listen to us on this podcast, Left of Old North. Also, we're going to be posting a lot more on our Substack. We've got a lot of newsletter type stuff coming down the pipeline. Let us know if you want to see more video, if you want to see more of our TikTok. Yes, we do have a TikTok. If you haven't checked it already, you should. We are also on all socials as Left of Old North. So make sure to go and follow us. If you cannot make an actionable action within this week, make sure to go and follow us so you stay in the loop. And you can always reach out to us and ask questions. We're more than happy to get involved and engage with you. So
if you want to reach out to us, leftofoldnorth@gmail.com.
Yeah, send us an email. Say hey, say what's up, and let us know if you're going to stay with us here on the Left of Old North. Thank you, everybody.